Well, hello there. How you doing? It's another easygoing video from good old Uncle Kenny, master of metaphysics, leatherworker, translator. It's kind of an odd combination, isn't it? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You notice how people are getting really, really, really weird. Like the people that you thought were trustworthy, ultimately, you can break down trust kind of easy. It depends on how much stress you put on it and at what point. But people have really gotten unreliable, kind of like in the extreme almost. But I know that's been happening for the past few years, but it seems to be amping up. Yeah, it does. Seems like it is. Do hit something. Actually, we had a great live stream last night. It went on for over 3 hours. And I really went deep down the rabbit hole on metaphysics. Usually that makes people's minds warp, kind of like a vinyl record in the back window of your car in the middle of summer. But people really enjoyed it and then started inviting other people in. And I always end up deleting the live streams after every live stream because it breaks the continuity of all the videos. But people are inviting other people in, and you know, the numbers kept getting larger. Usually they tail off, especially after 2 hours, but the opposite happened. But it is really great communicating with people. I'm making a second one of these. Specifically, it's a corkscrew toroidal fractal antenna. Let me repeat that again. Corkscrew toroidal fractal antenna. I know a lot about antenna theory. Here it is. I know it kind of looks like something for making, you know, turning corn into tonsil varnish. You ever heard that one before, tonsil varnish? That's not what it is. You actually take this and you bend it all the way around. You actually stretch it out a little further. Actually, I wrap this around a piece of large steel pipe, and then I just actually take this out and bend it around. And I solder a lead over here and a lead over here. It works on UHF, VHF. It's something, it's very interesting. People don't think in terms of antenna theory. I know that sounds really boring. Antenna theory, yeah, who cares? But nobody thinks about this. But if I were to straighten this out, of course it came in coil form, a larger coil to begin with, off of a larger roll that I have. But if I were to straighten this out completely, it's not a harmonic anymore. It's gain in decibels. Antennas are rated in gain. Its gain in decibels would go way down. It would basically become a piece of junk. And also, too, if I were to transmit anything over, say, 2 or 3 watts in it, then the gain would be so bad that it would develop a feedback loop of the energy back into the radio and destroy the radio. On really expensive radios, they have this thing called an antenna tuner. But that's another matter of theory that you're not interested in. But what do you think, in its current form, all I have to do is actually pull this out. Actually, it's like this. I'm going to have to rebend it slightly. But bring it out into a semicircle. Actually, I have to do this with concentration of 2 hands. Take these 2 ends and bend them out 90 degrees perpendicular to where they currently are and solder the lead off of it. And then you have this brilliant, super simple. You could hang it up with a piece of cordage or dental floss. It doesn't weigh that much. Anywhere in the house, hopefully not next to your head, especially when you're transmitting. But if I were to straighten this out, it becomes worthless. So what is it about the harmonic form that it takes that it makes it so useful? I want to actually, and I was talking last night, saying I can take the entirety of everything regarding liberation ontology, the entire summation of metaphysics, and stick it in something like a 10 or 15-page comic book. Not with any illustrations, because I'm not good at illustration. Well, I'm not too bad. But just stick it in like a 10 or 15-page booklet. You could take all of that and do that. I've actually got the link below that I did a couple, 3 years ago called the Aurora Sapientia, where I actually stuck everything essentially on a 2-page card. People said I couldn't do it, but I did it. I didn't have anybody contest me on the fact that I didn't achieve my goal on that, because I did. It's very compact and condensed, but I said I could fit it on a card that's like 5 by 7, double-sided, and I did. All of this stuff is really, really simple. Everything about harmonics, constructive interference, destructive interference. Have you thought for like 5 seconds or 10 seconds why straightening out that wire would make it useless? But in its current form, just completing that out, just a couple more bends, it's very, very useful as a fractal antenna for 2-meter 440, specifically UHF and VHF. Why is that? What is it about the shape that makes it so much better? They actually make antennas like when you buy a little handheld like this, and I used to be in a ham radio big time, not really anymore. This is a 2-meter 440 handheld transceiver. This has a certain gain, and this antenna achieves the exact same purpose. You see it's larger. It actually has a different wavelength that it has better gain for both transmission and reception. But inside of this is actually just a coiled piece of wire. If I straighten it out and stick the antenna with its coaxial connector back on top of the radio, it doesn't work right anymore. It'll work, but not very well. Same wire, all I did was straighten it out. Kind of like a slinky, right? You know, everybody enjoys a slinky. That's an old school tool. But if we straighten it out, nobody wants to play with a straightened out slinky, right? It's no good anymore. So what is it about the shape? The geometry that makes it a harmonic. You can actually push it down the stairs, and most of you are probably too young. You've never experienced a slinky. That was before social media. You pushed a slinky down the stairs and it would worm its way down the stairs, and it was kind of fascinating. You know, still is fascinating, really. I got a toroidal slinky here called a toroflux. I straighten this out, it essentially becomes worthless. People actually stick these on their hands and they roll them up and down their arms. They're kind of fascinating. It's a toroidal slinky in the shape of a torus. Yeah, you can do that number. Yeah, I know that's not fascinating. That's low-grade level entertainment. It's still fascinating. I want to talk about the importance and simplicity of everything regarding 2 lights and 2 shadows. I've talked about this before, but in a completely different aspect. I was talking last night and it fascinated everybody. There's things I consider to be so superficial and banal to a lot of people are incredibly fascinating. Sometimes I forget that. You know, the really simple stuff that people can easily wrap their minds around is very fascinating to them. In ancient Pali and Sanskrit, essentially the exact same term. We have vidya and avidya. Vidya means wisdom. It also, too, means light. Avidya is the same as vidya. You just add an a prefixal before it. It means the opposite or the inverse of. Avidya means nescience or agnosis or ignorance. Not terrestrial ignorance. Terrestrial ignorance means the ignorance of a certain persona non grata, the ignorance of Bob, Sue, or Larry. We're not talking about that. We're talking about pre-embodiment, primordial agnosis. But that term is usually translated as ignorance. But it also, too, means illumination. We're going to understand the 2 lights and the 2 shadows here, and the simplicity of drawing everything into absolute simplicity. So you don't have to read hundreds of books. If you read hundreds of books that are really good on the topic, you can boil it all down. Like I said, I could stick it into a comic book. And I can stick it into a comic book. I'd actually do it right now, but I have 2, technically 3 other works that I'm working on writing. So we're talking about wisdom or agnosis. Of course, people don't understand wisdom versus intelligence. Intelligence is empirical knowledge, or episteme. Say you get into a car wreck tomorrow, you know, your head gets hit in a car accident, all that stuff that you've been collecting up in your head, psh, it's all gone. That's episteme, or empirical knowledge. It actually has a specific locus in the psychophysical person, Bob, Sue, or Larry. Wisdom is self-assimilation. It is self-proximity. It has nothing to do, say you get in a car accident tomorrow and your head gets scrambled. Wisdom is completely unaffected. We're talking about 2 different epicenters of understanding. The epicenter of the psychophysical person, which is empirical knowledge. People talk about intelligence and IQ. That's all well and fine. It'll get you a lot of things in the world, but it is not wisdom. It's just not. 1 and 1. I don't know if you know this or not, but the first 2 digits of the Fibonacci sequence are 1 and 1. You know, the second one is not a different one than the first. It's principle and attribute. I ask people to understand light and illumination. Illumination is a modulation, a frequency, a wavelength. And for purposes of metaphysics and simplicity, saying frequency, wavelength, and modulation or disturbance is the exact same thing. The two most important passages, either in Sanskrit or ancient Pali, as I've mentioned before, are Bhavanyarodhanabandham. Nirvana means the subjugation of becoming, becoming meaning perturbation, frequency, or modulation. The other one is yoga. People say, well, I know what yoga means. People think of somebody, sitting in the lotus position or something, a physical posture. True yoga is a reference to the path of liberation. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Chitta, of course, is a nous or spiritus sanctum. Chitta vritti nirodha. Vritti means disturbance or perturbation. Again, modulation. Nirodha means ending of, subjugation of, the termination of. So liberation is the removal of or the termination of modulation. Isn't that the definition of self-proximity? Now, the one thing that's actually confused endless wise masters for countless hundreds of thousands of years is the soul is inherently pure, which of course it is by definition in any and all forms of metaphysics. And why do we talk about purification of the soul? I have it in front of me here, but I have what is it? It's a 14-karat gold necklace my wife gave me. I wear it to remind me of her, which is 56% gold. I mean, gold is gold is gold. When we talk about purification, we're talking about making a concentration of something. It is scattered with other things. Copper, silver, there's a lot of different ways you can amalgam gold to get 10-karat gold or 14-karat gold or 18-karat gold. Pure bullion grade gold, which would be like 3 nines or 4 nines, essentially totally pure gold. What are we talking about? Well, what's the opposite of dilution? We're talking about concentration. I'd like to actually diverge off this topic because what fascinated people last night, and I've talked about what evil is and what demons are kind of endlessly, but evil and demons try to destroy what is pure, either objectively so or inherently so. In their ignorant minds, they accurately, now I'm not taking their position, obviously so, but in their ignorant little minds, they see the fallibility of the imprint of anything beautiful, objectively or otherwise. Kind of like a wax seal, like a signet ring someone would have. They actually press it into the wax seal to prove that the king sent the letter, for example, because there's only one seal like that in the whole world, and it's the king. He put his seal at the bottom of it, there was some hot wax, and he stuck his signet ring in there. That signet impression, of course, is beautiful. It's an identification of what is true and pure. The same is true of the shadow that these evil people and these demons actually see. They see the fallibility of that phenomena, because of course you could take the wax and put a candle to it and melt it and destroy it, and of course it's certainly not going to last. But they don't understand the logos. The greatest ignorance, and this is a key important thing, because I'm trying to make this very simple, and people are trying to understand evil and these demonic entities, is that in every culture says they do the same thing. The top 10 list of everything that is evil and demonic is the destruction, debasement of anything that is pure and or beautiful. Number 1 and number 2, number 3, top 10, they have all exactly the same thing. Every record of the same, whether you believe it or not, and some are absolutely undeniable, they always have the same purpose. Well, why is that? The greatest ignorance of these entities is that they have no idea what the logos is. They don't understand it at all. Their aim is to destroy what is beautiful and divine, whether it be objective or otherwise, like I said. They see the fallibility of that, just like I could take anything beautiful on this table and destroy it. I mean, I can make this antenna beautiful in that it works perfectly, but if I straighten it out, I've destroyed it as well. It's very easy to destroy. In their own ignorance, which of course evil by definition, anything demonic by definition, is inherently ignorant of something pure and divine, and they don't understand upper echelons of ultimate truth, or the demiurge, or specifically the logos. That's the one thing that they have no idea of, is that they're actually wagging their finger and they're trying to destroy what is beautiful. Say, look, 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 look. And demons have pointed this out before when they've been able to communicate in the form of possessed individuals and whatnot. Say, look at this. This was now beautiful, and now it is an ugly heap or a mess. It's like, yeah, but you didn't understand what the beauty is. The beauty was not in the thing in itself, just like the signet ring and the wax seal. It is an impression of the logos. The logos is transcendent to that phenomena. You have destroyed something beautiful, and you've debased it, and you've ruined it, but you have not made your point, because in your supreme ignorance, which By demonic, we are talking about supreme ignorance. It is against that which is divine and pure. They destroy what is fallible and beautiful, but they don't understand the Logos, and they certainly don't understand the divine. They think the second shadow is the first. The second shadow, by the way, is the one cast by matter and phenomena. Might have a beautiful shape, take something beautiful, shine a light on it, even its shadow on the wall may be beautiful. They confuse the second shadow with the first shadow. The first shadow, of course, is the invisibility or the ultimate shadow of the light itself, because light is not seen. Nobody sees light, they see illumination. Illumination, no different than avidya. Isn't it amazing that illumination and ignorance, avidya, refer to modulation? In this case, we're talking about EMR, modulation of electromagnetic radiation. But in the case of liberation versus embodiment, we're talking about modulation of spirit. That's the reason why the two most succinct, boiled-down passages from Sanskrit and Pali say the same thing. Bhavnirodha Nabandham, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. They're all talking about the cutting off, the destruction of modulation. The primordial agnosis that drives fears, angers, desires, on and on, attachments, false identification. By the way, as a side note, one thing I mentioned, people really loved it last night in the live stream, and it's very important, that there are people that are not necessarily demonic, but they're in love with misery. You got to be careful on the road of life, the path of life. When you run into people that are like stuck down a well, there's only two different types of people that are stuck down a well. There are the ones that want you to come in and be miserable with them, which is exactly what demonic entities want. But they don't have to be demonic. But they're on the cusp of saying. They want you to come down in with them and commiserate with them. They say, well, yeah, misery loves company. Everybody's heard that passage, of course. Evil loves company. Hence, of course, the phrase, we are legion, we are many. This is also, too, the reason that people knock on your door like, hello, we'd like to we'd like to convert you to the belief system of Bada Bing. It's like, well, it's obviously not helping you at all, because if it were true and ultimate truth, it would be fulfilling you. But the only way you get fulfillment is trying to convert people to this ignorant belief system, that you're attached to. I mean, that's no different. The people that knock on your door, hello, we'd like to talk to you about joining our church. It's like, you're legion. He's like, the more the better. These are the people that want you to crawl down the well with them. The other type of person is like, can you throw me a ladder or throw me a piece of rope, tie it to a tree and throw the rope down the hole. You could leave, but I beg you, please throw me a rope so I could extract myself out of this hole. You really got to be careful on the road of life if people want to, pull you down into the hole with them. They are on the cusp of evil, if not evil themselves. They may not be inherently evil, but the substrate of what they are and what they cleave to does make them evil. That's something to to watch out for. Anyway, modulation is embodiment. The very term in ancient Pali and Sanskrit, and this is extremely telling, for primordial agnosis, and I don't mean terrestrial agnosis of a person, Bob, Sue, Larry, so on and so forth. Agnosis is pre-embodiment. It references primordial agnosis, the driving factor for re-embodiment. Identity, suffering, attachments, fears, desires, so on and so forth is no different than saying illumination. I'm pointing at the light, but what I see is not light, it is illumination. The light itself is rest. I've said a million times that people do not understand the principle of rest. If you understand the difference between rest and force, you're like a third of the way there. Getting back to this antenna over here, I've never said, people have misinterpreted that there is memory in water, because water is the only incommensurable geometry in the entire universe. I said it is within the logos of that specific geometry, which is the Pythagoreans said this, the Platonists said that, the only perfect geometry in the entire cosmos. Without water, there of course is no life. That's the only, there's not another one. There's not a second one. That's the reason why I got it tattooed right here on the underside, the back side of my hand, this specific 108, 36, 36 degree triangle. Same geometry as the water molecule. this in triplicate makes up the Pythagorean pentagram. There's a reason why the Pythagoreans had one symbol for representation of the monistic metaphysics of the Pythagoreans. Specifically, it's liberation ontology based in wisdom, which is what original Buddhism is. By the way, the term Buddhism didn't even exist until the 16th century. The only time it's called anything is Brahmayana, meaning path to the absolute. Someone actually sent me an email last night and saying, they're talking about you over on Reddit about your discussion of Buddhism and the soul and original Buddhism. And, you know, if you pay us a certain amount of money, we can scrub this from the internet. I mean, I think that's just great free advertising, not the guy in the email. You know, the fact that they're discussing it. You know, everything I say is based in doctrine, facts, logic, and wisdom. There's nothing that they could come after me regarding that. You know, I'm not discussing my feelings or opinions or beliefs. I'm actually saying, what does it actually say in doctrine? I've been translating Pali now for 25 plus years. You know, I'm not interested in commentary and opinions and conjectures. It's like, what do the texts actually say? You know, the ideation that I would pay somebody to scrub that off the internet. I was like, I don't care. Not only do I not care, I love it. I don't care how much, you know, brown matter that they fling at me. You know, it's like, what do you got that contradicts what I've said in video? And the answer is nothing. I've been debating that topic for 3 decades. It's not my opinion or feeling that I haven't been bested on that. I haven't been. I've debated the quote-unquote best in the world, and they've completely failed. Because they'll always reference commentary or a teacher or guru, bada bing, said this. Rather, what's the original say? Atasarana nanasarana, the soul is a refuge with none other is a refuge. Ata dipa viharate. Dwell with the soul as thy light or illumination. Actually, it means light. Illumination, of course, once again, is modulation. So, I never said there was a memory in water. I said it is in the logos of the specific geometry. All of this is ultimately connected. Like I've said, there's no distinction between metaphysics and physics. They're one and the same thing. I mean, magnetism is modulation, is loss of energy. And by energy, I mean rest. It is the force vector of same. It has a frequency. It's called the Lamore frequency, the median geomagnetic frequency of the three-dimensional force vector that makes up the toroidal geometry of the magnetic three-dimensional force vector. It's about 42 megahertz. If you actually take one section of this, and I've done it before, actually marked out with like a Sharpie marker or some colorful tape, you'll actually see this three-dimensional curved S-curve, which is extrapolation of rest or energy. When you actually release energy, it is transformed into something else, but that something else is the same thing, except in a different mode. Yeah? The mode of light is illumination. The mode of wisdom in appearance or manifestation, which is the cause of embodiment, is, of course, that primordial agnosis. I shouldn't actually say cause. Creationism and monistic metaphysics are completely different in that there is no prima causa or original sin or first cause. That first cause is no different than the one. And this, of course, is where we get into asking the question, why is there anything rather than nothing at all? And the answer is divinely simple. The only great irony is explaining same is actually quite difficult. It's actually not difficult. Principle over attribute, or the discovery which is hidden in Plato's Republic 509d to 511 that I discovered, is 1 over 5 to the power of -3. That would be the first one of the Fibonacci sequence over top of the second one, which is not different than the first one, rather the attribute of same. Here's a thought experiment, and you could do it yourself. You'll see that I'm 100% correct because you can't beat it. Is that you cannot think of anything in this universe, real or unreal. I said also too unreal. That doesn't have at least one attribute. Nothing can be seen or unseen, real or unreal, that doesn't have at least, most things have many more than one, that doesn't have at least one attribute. Of course, regarding the divine or the one, i.e. the agathon, its attribute is the same thing as its principle. However, that's the Greeks called this tolma, they called it ananke, they also too called it the euristos dias, it's also too specifically the demiurge. The demiurge, of course, is the euristos dias, or the extrinsic attribute of the one, like good and the good, light and illumination. These are not two different things. They are principal attributes, principle and attribute, which is a holos. a one thing, not two things. So modulation is embodiment. It is frequency. If you can understand the two lights and the two shadows, you can really understand 2/3 of the most complicated Platonic Pythagorean metaphysics that there is. It's like you have to have that key in your head. Unless you have that key or clavis, that legend in your head, like a little map has a legend in the bottom, like these little markings mean this or they mean that, then you got no way of understanding the map. Like, I don't know what these squiggly lines are I'm looking at. I don't know what this is. You can look at a map, you can still not understand it. You got to know what the legend says down here. Well, the squiggly lines mean this, that means train tracks, on and on. So people have to have that within their head before they should ever read any of these things like Plotinus, Numenius, Cyrianus, Aristotle, the Pitaphesian, on and on and on. You have to have that. Otherwise, you're just reading. Well, I can read it. It's in my language. It's in English. But what does it say? I don't know what it says. I'm reading it, but I don't get it. Well, you actually have to have that key in your head. So, I did a really great job of summing up what evil and demons' modus operandi is. And I think I did a really good job of that. Also, too, watch out for people that want you to crawl down the well with them rather than wanting a hand out. Anyway, avidya is magnetism. It is modulation. It is form and time. Space is the after effect of a divergent magnetic field. What do you think the volume of the torus actually is? When you actually have this, then you have that. When you actually have mass and magnitude, then you have time and measure. And then you have the antinomies. The Greeks and Aristotle talked about the antinomies endlessly. But I can't stick all of this in a 10 or 15 page comic book. I'll do that someday. Anyway, if you ever want a micro neck wallet, let me know. You actually wear it around your neck, and this is mine. I took it to Florida with me. And it holds 6 credit cards, and there's a slot here for money. It's made out of buffalo. You just snap it there. That way, you wear it around your neck, and people, you don't have to carry a purse if you're a female, or carry a wallet if you're a male. Very simple. You got to slip it down your shirt like this. It's basically an pickpocketing position. Pickpocket experts say the most impossible place to try to pickpocket anybody is like something hanging around their neck. So, if you ever want one, send me an email on that. I make these. I was wearing this for the past week when I was in Florida, just to make things simple. Way I could wear lightweight shorts and I had to pack a wallet in my shorts when I was traveling. Thank you so much for watching. You're going to contact me. Information is below. Any donations always warmly welcome. Lux e veritas. This universe is really simple, but a lot of human beings try to complicate it. I'm interested in doing the opposite of complicating it, because it's really, really simple. It's not simplex, but it's simple. Thank you.